It was a night that changed Turkey forever. 1 year on, we relived the moment the Turks stood up in front of tanks. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Ali Mustafa and this is Strait Talk. The night of July 15, 2016 started off like any other night, but hidden behind the calm, a conspiracy was underway. A faction within the military was about to take Turkey hostage. Their mission to abort the constitution and forcibly remove an elected leadership. There was just one problem, a defiant people who refused to surrender. On that warm summer night, Turks united to answer a call for democracy. Ömer Kaplan has their story.
July 15 marks a year since 249 people were killed while they were standing against an attempt to derail Turkish democracy. It was a conspiracy, Turkey says, that was orchestrated thousands of kilometers away, but was defeated on this bridge. This is the Bosphorus Bridge, one of the first targets for the coup plotters. They set up barricades to cut Istanbul in half. It was to send a message that the city had fallen. Throughout the night, tanks rolled through it in a show of force. I met with Emrah Hiçdönmez, who was on the bridge that night, to understand what really happened.
Benim vurulma anım saat 2 sularında oldu. Bir yaralıyı almaya giderken vurdular beni de. Görüntü gerçekten insanlığa sığmayacak. İçler acısı bir durumdaydı. Herkes kan revan içerisinde, yaralanmış, elleri kopmuş, vücutları parçalanmış, hunharca vurulmuş ve katledilmişlerdi. Ölüm korkusu kesinlikle yoktu üzerimizde. Biz yani öleceğimi hiç düşünmedim. 6 yaşında bir oğlum var benim. Onu evimde bırakıp gittim ben.
Despite the resistance of hundreds of people like Emrah, the coup was spreading far and wide across Turkey. It would strike at the heart of Turkey's seat of power. I went to the capital Ankara, where the Turkish parliament, a symbol of democracy, was bombed. Ayşe Keşir was there that night to see it all. The AK Party MP was inside parliament when it was attacked.
Ne dünyada ne işte Türkiye'deki daha önceki darbelerde parlamento binaları bombalanmadı. Burası 80 milyonun temsil edildiği kalbi, ülkenin kalbi burası. Çünkü şu an bulunduğumuz yer, bombanın düştüğü yer. Sol tarafa düştü bomba ve bizim genel kurulda arkamızda kalan kapının hemen arkasında. Ve ben hala o anki barut kokusunu ciğerlerimde hissediyorum. Ben 3 kız annesiyim ve şunu dedim, Allah'ım ne olur bu ülke Bosna olmasın.
Just when it seemed the coup had succeeded and all seemed lost, this happened.
Milletimizi illerimizin meydanlarına davet ediyorum. Havalimanlarına davet ediyorum ve milletçe meydanlarda, havalimanında toplanalım.
Erdogan's FaceTime message calling on Turks to resist the coup was shared millions of times online, while the old-school coup plotters were busy taking over the state television. Turks rallied around Erdogan's call to action, sending the coup plotters scrambling in defeat on the streets and on the bridge. And so by dawn, the will of the people proved stronger than the forces of conspiracy. A rare victory for democracy in a country with a history of successful coups. Ömer Kaplan, Strait Talk.
And joining me now from Ankara is Turkey's Deputy Prime Minister Mehmet Şimşek. Mr. Şimşek, good to have you on the show. Now, 1 year ago on July 15th, you and I met at the Nizip refugee camp in Gaziantep, where you spoke of Turkey's security challenges. Did you ever imagine a coup would be underway a few hours later?
No. In fact, in the early moments of the coup attempt, when I was told that a coup was underway, I was in disbelief. I thought that they were just joking. It was an ordinary day for me. I was in Gaziantep with the Secretary General of OECD, Angel Gurria. We launched Turkey Report, and then we visited a refugee camp. And then we came back. OECD Secretary General was ready, his team and luggages. They were about to go to the airport. I said, look, there's a coup underway. We can't fly tonight. And he also said, I must be joking, that I must be joking. And I said, no, it's not, actually. So he said, what do we do? I said, well, you go to your room and watch international TV networks, and I will, see what I can do. And then, of course, the night began. It wasn't like a nightmare, but by early hours of the morning, it was over.
Were you at any point concerned the coup might succeed?
Well, the last coup, when the last coup happened back in 1980s, I was a little kid, and I was in the village, and at that time my village didn't have electricity. There was no TVs. There were no TVs or radio. At least we were not aware of it. So that was my first time ever. So I didn't know what to think, and immediately we said, look, what do we do? Of course, people need to resist, and that was the idea, is to get more people on the street, and so that we can safeguard Turkish democracy, rule of law, and our fundamental rights and freedoms, Turkey's future.
What about the criticism in the Western media about the post-coup purges, arrests and detention, specifically of university professors, journalists and judges who have been detained without charge, suspected of being FETÖ members?
Well, first of all, the failed coup attempt in Turkey is no ordinary, no classic coup. Therefore, Turkey's response has been complicated. Had this been just an ordinary coup, Turkey would go after rogue army officers, and that would be it. But the coup was planned, was designed, and executed by a religious criminal network, FETÖ. FETÖ, for the past 40, 50 years, has been recruiting smart kids from very early ages, brainwash them to their cells, and infiltrate into state sectors, state departments. So Turkey, despite all these traumas, maintains a course that is going to strengthen Turkish democracy, going to strengthen rule of law, and we're not going to give up. Turkey is not going to become an inward-looking country. We remain open, we remain integrated to global economy, and we're not going to give up. We're going to continue to enhance Turkey's standards of democracy, boost fundamental rights and freedoms. In fact, combating FETÖ terror network on its own strengthens Turkish democracy. Separating civil servants who have their loyalty to a religious, lunatic, as opposed to having loyalty to Turkish state or Turkish nation, on its own is good for Turkish democracy.
Turkey's Deputy Prime Minister Mehmet Şimşek, thank you for joining us from Ankara. Still to come on Strait Talk, who got it right and who got it wrong? We look back on the media coverage of last year's failed coup. And with all fingers pointing to Fethullah Gülen as the mastermind of the coup, we break down the evidence.
Global media coverage of the July 2016 coup attempt in Turkey failed to grasp the reality of events on the ground and did not provide an inclusive analysis. Almost immediately, the focus shifted from the coup to Turkey's President Erdogan, with many outlets reporting that he would use the coup to solidify his grip on power. Some reports falsely claimed that Erdogan staged the coup himself, while others reported that he fled to Germany but was denied asylum. In a time of turmoil, it's normal that people jump to conclusions, but often the language used went beyond reasonable grounds. Foreign Policy published a report calling Erdogan a mafia boss, and the BBC called him Turkey's ruthless president. The Independent's Robert Fisk said that Erdogan was behind the coup, with no evidence, and went as far as to predict that another coup was imminent. He omitted any reference to who might have actually been behind the coup. Average Turkish citizens who opposed the coup were vilified and belittled. In a very Orientalist way, the New York Times said they were Islamists dancing on the streets, while on their official Twitter channel, they quoted that Erdogan supporters are sheep who follow anything he says. After the failed coup, Fox News commentators said Turkey's last hope had died. As things settled, media focus shifted from an obsession with Erdogan to the state of emergency imposed after the coup, the arrests and detentions of suspected coup plotters, and the alleged disruption of democracy in Turkey. It's understandable that a large amount of people being detained and suspended seems extraordinary, but it's difficult for people living outside of Turkey to understand the Gülenists because they have seldom, if ever, dealt with the group that has tried to infiltrate state institutions in such a way. Most press coverage referred to Gülen as a cleric living in self-imposed exile in the United States, whose followers engaged in interfaith dialogue, but rarely did anyone explain Turkey's position or who was behind the coup, and efforts to bring the perpetrators to justice, including Fethullah Gülen. And it wasn't just Western media. Much closer to home, Egyptian media immediately jumped the gun, reporting that the military had toppled Erdogan, even though the coup was averted in a matter of hours. This anti-Turkey rhetoric continues until today. The media's role is, of course, to inform and hold others accountable. But was global media coverage of Turkey's coup fair? You decide.
And to discuss this further, I'm joined from London by David Hurst, who is the editor-in-chief of the Middle East Eye. David, thank you for joining us. And we've seen a lot of commentators, especially in Egypt, in the UAE, calling for another coup in Turkey. Are these attempts still underway by groups in the UAE and Egypt to have another coup in Turkey?
I think there's several ways in which Erdogan has been attacked. In the aftermath of the coup, it was very, very clear a year ago that there was a predisposition on behalf of the Western media for the thing to succeed. And we saw this really in the early hours. Even before the facts had been known, there were articles being put out basically saying that Erdogan had polarized the nation, and this was the result, and he basically, and he was the author of his own doom. That was a very consistent line, even before the facts had come out. Then there was this whole period, if you remember, about 12 hours, 13 hours, when it was put out by exactly the same media that are attacking Qatar now. I'm talking about Al Arabiya, which is Saudi-owned, or Sky News Arabi, which is part owned by Murdoch, but also controlled by the Emirates, who basically said it's over, it's finished, Erdogan's fled, he's gone to Germany, or he's been captured. And then they quickly had to row back afterwards. So there was this predisposition. That's one side of the media reaction. The other side was a much more insidious one, which was basically saying Erdogan is authoritarian, he's Islamist, he used Gülen to rise to power, and Gülen, of course, was presented as a preacher of peace and non-violence.
1 year ago, 2 weeks after the coup, you wrote a column in the Middle East Eye in which you revealed that the UAE had funneled money to the coup plotters, suspected coup plotters using exiled Fatah, Palestinian Fatah leader Mohammed Dahlan as a go-between. What more have you learned in the years since the coup and since that column?
Well, that this was a fairly extensively pre-planned operation, that Dahlan was used for the money side of it, and also for coordination. Dahlan represents and takes his money from the United Arab Emirates, and they were one of the parties that were interested in seeing a coup like this succeed in exactly the same way that they are one of the parties behind the assault and the media campaign against Qatar as well. So 1 year on, with what's going on against Qatar and also what nearly happened against Turkey, it all appears to sort of fit into place.
Thank you so much. A pleasure. David Hurst joining us from London. So we've seen how the coup unfolded a year ago, but who was pulling the strings? Where did the orders come from? One critical piece of evidence was given by Turkey's army chief Hulusi Akar, who was briefly held captive by the coup plotters. For Turkey, the evidence points to a cult-like figure who heads a shadowy organization with global reach. Kieran Burke tells us who he is.
This is the man Turkey suspects of masterminding the failed coup on July 15th. To his followers, Fethullah Gulen is the Imam of the universe. But Turkey says he is a cult leader who heads a subversive movement called FETÖ.
Bir ve beraber olarak 40 yıllık hazırlığı, 40 yıllık birikimi, 40 yıllık sinsi hesabı 20 saate kalmadan yer ile eksan etti.
Since 1974, Gulen has built an extensive network of more than 1,000 schools and universities around the world. On the surface, the FETÖ group is devoted to interfaith dialogue and a tolerant vision of Islam. But this facade hides a more sinister purpose.
Dünyayı sırtınıza alıp taşıyabilecek güce ulaşacağınız ana kadar, o kuvveti temsil edeceğiniz şeyler elinizde olacağı ana kadar, Türkiye'deki devlet yapısı ölçüsüne göre bütün anayasal müesseselerdeki güç ve kuvveti cephenize çekeceğiniz ana kadar her adım erken sayılır.
Over decades, Gulen has gained access to many followers, financial resources, and political influence. It gave him control over parts of the Turkish state. Gulen's disciples infiltrated government institutions including the armed forces, police, the judiciary, and even political parties. Despite his alleged crimes, Gulen has remained free and protected in the US state of Pennsylvania. From there, he has exerted influence on Turkey. But Ankara says this grip has loosened as a result of the post-coup purge. Gulen denies he is behind the coup and says it could have been staged by the government. Turkey has asked the US to extradite Gulen to stand trial for his alleged crimes. But US prosecutors say Turkey has yet to provide conclusive evidence of Gulen's suspected role in the failed coup. Turkey says that until Gulen is extradited, there will be no justice for the victims of July 15th. Kieran Burke, Strait Talk.
And joining me in the studio is Robert Amsterdam, a consul to the Turkish government and also from Amsterdam and Partners LLP. Now, you have been specifically focusing on charter schools, Gulen-run charter schools, not only in the US, but also globally. Tell us about your findings and your research as far as this network is concerned.
Well, we're about to publish a 700-page book that detail the findings, but quite frankly, never in almost 40 years of doing investigations have I run across an organization like the Gulen organization. To say that this is an empire of deceit or deception is an understatement. Probably the largest H-1B visa scam in history, probably the largest charter school scam in history, frightening what they're doing to American children, frightening the level of attempts by the Gulen organization to actually not only inculcate certain children, but actually bring them into the cult. The level of scams going on around these schools is really hard to describe, which is why essentially it took us 2 years and 20 people going through the public record in 29 states to put it together. And when we did, we really found that the Gulen organization isn't interested in educating American children. They're interested in taking money from the poorest of American children and diverting it into the cult.
When did you get involved in investigating and compiling all this evidence? Because on the other side, contrarians say that the Gulen network is still providing good education. It's essential. It's one of the largest networks or charter school networks in the United States. So what raised the red flags for you, and how did you get involved in this?
Well, firstly, let's be clear. On the objective evidence of ratings in the United States, very few people would say that. For instance, almost all the Gulen schools in Ohio are D and F. Many of them in Florida and Texas and other states, the same thing. The involvement came as a result of the Turkish government retaining us many months before the coup to look into the Gulen organization. And quite frankly, at that point, I was shocked that this man existed, that he had this level of involvement in the schools, because the schools make it a practice of never disclosing their Gulen schools. The schools, the teachers, everyone involved makes it very clear that they don't want to admit they're affiliated. So on the face of it, until this book comes out, there are really very few documents that piece together their activities. We've identified not only the schools, but the real estate fronts, the middlemen, how they extract so many millions from the system.
Tell us about that specifically, like a case study in a state. Expand on that for us.
Let's take Ohio, where we filed a complaint with the Ohio state authorities, where what they do is they take a school, let's say for $10, we'll make it simple. They sell it to a Gulen-related entity for $11 or $12. Then that Gulen-related entity will take market rent and jack it up by 2 or 3 or 4 times. And we've documented it in our complaint to the Ohio authorities. Then what they'll do is they'll float a bond. And on the basis of that bond, they might sell that school to some further Gulen middlemen for much more money than they paid. Then they renegotiate the lease and they make it a triple net lease, and they make sure the public entity never has a right to the property, no matter how many millions of dollars are paid.
It looks like exhaustive work. Thank you for joining us, Robert Amsterdam.
Thank you.
...1956'da Erzurum'a gelin geldim. 60'da ihtilal oldu işte. O zaman 5 senenin, 6 senenin geliniydim. İkinci yoksulluk, çok kötü yoksulluğuna geldik. Yoksulluğuna mesela hiç ekmek yok. Her şey karneyle. Menderes gelince yani yaşlılarımızın şeyiyle o kadar mutlu oldu. Yaşlılarımız seviniyor ki böyle. Yoksulluk hemen hemen kalkmaya başladı. Yani ele 10 sene bir safa sürdük. 10 sene. 10 sene tabii bu ihtilal olunca bütün yaşlılarımız ağlamaya başladı. Asmaya götürdüler oğlum. Dünya yıkıldı, yani bitti dedik, bütün bitti Türkiye. Mert'e geldik 73'te. Onu 80 işte ondan sonra şey oldu. İyiydi biraz. Yine biraz toparlandık. Yine bir de şey oldu işte, askere el koydu zaten. O zaman da solcu sağcı. Benim İstanbul'da 4 tane kız büyüttüm. Hepsi zeki, hele de zeki çocukların. Bir tanesini üniversiteyi okutamadım. 10 sene rafa içinde yaşadık gerçekten. Özal geldi ya, huzura kavuştuk. Onlara işte o da öyle gitti. İşte Allah bu hükümeti getirdi başımıza, Erdoğan'ı. Bahçeden geldim, öyle yorulmuşum ki yattım. Biraz uyudum ama Allah Allah dedim. Hele bir kalkın bakın ki neyin nesi. Bir baktım siren sesleri, seleler veriliyor. Saate baktım, saat 3. Vay! Kız, hacı ne oluyor? Dedi ki ne olur, derbe var dedi. Menderes'in başına geleceği kesinlikle Erdoğan'ın. Hiç öyle bir şey düşünmedim, hala da şey yapmadım yani. Öyle ama dua ettik. Bir bancaradan başımı çıkarttım ki ne çıkarttım? Kıyamet kopuyor. Uçaklar avcıların tepesinden aşağı gidiyor. İnan böyle resmen avcılardan buradan. Ben 78 yaşındayım. O çok kötü günler geçirdik. O geçen günlerimizi de saymıyoruz. Şimdi bundan sonra yaşadığımı sayıyorum.
Next time on Strait Talk. With Qatar's diplomatic crisis now entering its 7th week, we break down what role Turkey has played in trying to find a solution. If you were in Turkey on July 15, 2016, you know exactly where you were and what you were doing. I was on the Syrian border covering a story on the refugees, and we first started hearing reports of a coup while driving back to Gaziantep later that evening. There were reports of soldiers blocking bridges like the one behind me and attacking civilians. The coup forces had taken over our own network, TRT World, and took us off air. So there was no way for us to tell the story of what happened next. But thanks to the internet, the people shared their own stories and spread the call to action. Social media was flooded with images of resistance, men, women, young and old, raising flags and signs of victory against guns and tanks. In Turkey, coups have often succeeded, but on the night of July 15th, the people came out on top. And that's all for this edition of Strait Talk with me, Ali Mustafa. Until next time, hoşça kalın and goodbye.